every way. I am getting better and better. Now, we're going to say it a few times, but since that's our new, we're continuing with Neville's teachings. Feeling is the secret. We're still on that thing. Healing is the secret, but that's not our topic, because the CD will be labeled Every Day in Every Way. And as lesson number 1 on Every Day in Every Way, our first topic is self-mastery. Self-mastery is a little article that I sent to you by email, and this that you have today as a pass out is a shorter version of it, where I basically took excerpts from each of the chapters, or from several of the chapters of that writing. And to get us centered, I want us to repeat that affirmation, but I want to do it with some feeling and understanding. So let's repeat it one more time. Every day, in every way, I am getting better and better. What we're continuing to focus on, center on, and practice is healing meditation, your own guided healing meditation. If you go and do research on these people like Coue, Emile, now the name could be pronounced Coue, I've heard it pronounced different ways, but it is French. Emile or Emile, Coue. Coue is easy for me because that's what I've always used. But when you, even Quimby, you go back to the healers of those days, you can keep it. Go ahead, hold on to it. And what I'm finding and observing is that while they were called healers, you will notice that the healing experiences involved, more often than not, and almost all with some extent, all of them, some of them, the healing happened because of those who were healed, their participation, their engagement, because of what they did in cooperation with his help, with their help. Have you noticed that? So what scripture comes to your mind more than any other scripture when it comes to this? It is done unto you as you believe. Now, we saw that happening with a number of instances in Jesus' healing. And I remember one case in particular, he says, your faith, go your way. Your faith. In other words, I didn't heal you. You healed yourself. Your faith has made you well. Oh. In one case, he picked up clay and put it on the man's face. Now you know clay doesn't have any power to heal. But he met the man at his level of belief and understanding. Right? So what healed him? It wasn't Jesus. It wasn't the clay. Right? One woman said, if I could just touch the hem, well, Jesus didn't heal the woman. The woman touched the heel of his garment and she was well because it was her faith, her belief. She left home and believed, I don't need it, I just need to touch the hem of his garment. So that's what this is all about. But what this does here is, like we've been saying from the beginning, is that it's self-empowering to know that you have the power, that I have the power to change things in my life and to heal myself. Let's say it every day. Every day, in every way, I am getting topic is self-mastery. This is written by, or it is about, Emile Coue's teaching. And the one who gave us this affirmation, every day, in every way, I am getting better and better. So he was a Frenchman who was a psychologist and a pharmacist. 1857 to 1926, French. And his practice was that as a pharmacist, and you know they were called pharmacists then because they operated what is called an apothecary, right? And that's a person who mixed medicines or mixed potions for people based upon their need, their complaint, their pain, their condition, put it together. And then, in his case, as a pharmacist, administered to people, but what was different about him than others at the time is that he was also a psychologist. I don't know what they called him at that time. But when he administered medicine, he gave it with what? An affirmation. That was the difference between him and others. In his case, there were immediate and dramatic healings, or healings over a period of time, different than other regular pharmacists. He stood out because what happened is that he would give them the medicine and increase their faith, their belief in the power of the medicine to now, this will help you. Don't just take this and walk away. No. This will help you. You will be healed. And now say this as you apply it. Every day in every way, I am getting better and better. And they did so and reported miraculous healings. That's his fame. So did he heal? No. He taught people how you can heal yourself. Let's tie this into what we've been practicing here with Neville. Now, in his book, The Law and the Promise by Neville, in chapter 4, the topic in chapter 4 is there is no fiction. What was our topic the last time you were here? There is no fiction. So I'm saying that to say we're not digressing. We're not talking about something new at all. We're talking about the creative power of imagination. We're talking about, we're giving you a tool to use, and it's not new because this is what we started off with when we first met 3 years ago. You remember? Yes. We were talking about suggestion, autosuggestion. We spent a number of weeks on autosuggestion. What we're doing now is picking up that tool and reminding ourselves of what we've already studied and everything that we've done between January and now this year on feeling is a secret and imagination. We're not doing anything different or anything new. There's no shift. What we're doing here is reminding you of the tool we've already talked about. Now, I'm giving you an opportunity to take it out of your tool chest and use it. It helps you to apply, practice, using this imagination to healing, to demonstration, to answered prayer. Are we clear? For instance, in one paragraph that we covered last week in the book, There Is No Fiction, start with this and move into this material. Neville said, if an imaginal activity can produce a physical effect, our physical world must be essentially imaginal. To prove this would require merely that we observe our imaginal activities and watch to see whether or not they produce corresponding external effects. If they do, then we must conclude that there is no fiction. Today's imaginal drama, fiction, become tomorrow's fact. If we had this world view of causation, that causation is mental, not physical, that our mental states are causative of physical effects, then we would realize our responsibility as a creator and imagine only the best imaginable. Remember that from last week? The drama of life originates in the imagination of man. The real act of becoming takes place within man's imagination and not without. Imagining creates reality. That's all we're doing. When we go into this material, what we're doing here is practicing, doing it, hands-on, practicing it. So let's read the material that you were given today, Self-Mastery by Emile, Coue. And what you have are some paragraphs or short excerpts from several of the chapters, from the 10 chapters of his complete document here. And the introduction, it says, autosuggestion is what we're talking about today. Autosuggestion is an instrument. So what is an instrument? Give me what would you say an instrument is?
A chair.
A what?
Chair.
Okay. I don't know what you said.
You know where you write checks.
Oh, okay. Let's go on with some different synonyms. Instrument. It's an instrument. Let me read the sentence and then I'll ask you that question. Autosuggestion is an instrument that we possess at birth. And in this instrument, or rather in this force, resides a marvelous and incalculable power, which according to circumstances produces the best or the worst results.
Imagination.
So yes, it's a tool. It's a tool. Something that you use. Yeah, it's a tool. It is that which you can use. And you've possessed it since birth. It came with you, which means you came equipped, innate, born with, always been there, unused. Unused, locked up. And it came to you to use with a purpose of creating, to create whatever it is that you want, and to use to change anything that you have created along the way, to revoke it, to reverse it, to neutralize it, to send it back, and to create something new in its place. And is free. It's a tool that you were born with. All right? That's the introduction. And then chapter 1 in part, he says, the conscious self and the unconscious self was the topic of the chapter 1. And these chapters, some of them are 2 or 3 pages, and some of them are 8 or 9 pages, but they're mostly short. And the title of this chapter is The Conscious Self and the Unconscious Self. In order to understand properly the phenomena of suggestion, or to speak more correctly, of autosuggestion. Now he's making a distinction between suggestion and autosuggestion and you should listen carefully for the distinction. In order to understand properly the phenomena of suggestion or autosuggestion, it is necessary to know that two absolutely distinct selves exist within us.
Yes.
Now, this is our basic fundamental teaching and understanding of New Thought teachings. First thing that we learn, very simply and with clarity, is this that I just read, that there's the conscious mind and the unconscious parts of the one mind, right? Conscious and unconscious, subconscious or conscious and unconscious. But today, we are learning to expand our understanding to a greater degree, and understanding with a greater degree of importance our understanding about the unconscious or the subconscious, because that's where the work is done with autosuggestion. It's the unconscious, it's the subconscious. That's where the power is. And in here, through these lessons for the next 1, 2, 3 weeks on this, is that we're learning the power of that subconscious, the power of that unconscious, and how to use it. And how to let it do the work for us that only it can do, and that is healing, and that is demonstration, and that is changing things in your life. It is the unconscious that does it. It is the subconscious that does it. But there has to be something, oh, this is a powerful word. There has to be something that is called agreement. Let's say that together 3 times, agreement. 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 And there is our weakness. Now let me explain how that is so. I have used this example many times, and I will use it many times again. You see, it's the acceptance. Now, when I say your part, I'm putting myself in that chair right where Daryl just sat, even though he was a little late. Just welcome back. I'm sitting right next to him. So when I say you, I'm talking about, I'm not excluding myself when I say you, because this is primarily for me. Y'all just coming along. I tell you that all the time. You can share this healing while I'm being healed if you like. But I'm preaching to myself.
Not to the choir.
Okay, so the problem with us, now I'll go back to you, is acceptance.
Yes.
You're going to find in this man's writing here, he's talking about the successes that he had in working with people, but he's also making it clear, I've had a lot of unsuccesses. But it has nothing to do with me, he says. It has all to do with you not agreeing and not accepting. That's what he's making clear.
Who was the guy again?
Coue, isn't it on your Coue, C-O-U-E, French, Emile, but I think it's written under Coue. In order to understand properly the phenomena of suggestion or autosuggestion, it is necessary to know that 2 absolutely distinct selves exist within us. Both are intelligent, but while one is conscious and the other is unconscious. But for this reason, the existence of the latter generally escapes notice. It is, however, easy to prove its existence of one if one merely takes the trouble to examine certain phenomena and to reflect a few moments upon them. Let us take, for instance, the following examples. Now, in the paper that is available to you online, this whole set, and what I have sent you and will send to you if you don't have it, are other examples. I just took one or two of his examples. Everyone has heard of somnambulism. That's sleepwalking, okay? Everybody has heard of somnambulism. Everyone knows that a somnambulist gets up at night without waking, leaves the room after either dressing himself or not, goes downstairs, walks along corridors, and after having executed certain acts or accomplished certain work, returns to his room, goes to bed again, and shows up the next day with greatest astonishment at finding work finished, which he had left unfinished the day before. It is, however, he himself who has done it without being aware of it. What force has his body obeyed if it is not an unconscious force, in fact, his unconscious self? The unconscious self is provided with a marvelous and impeccable memory which registers without our knowledge the smallest events, the least important acts of our existence. Further, it is credulous and accepts with unreasoning docility what it is told. We're talking about the unconscious, the subconscious. It is credulous and accepts with unreasoning docility what it is told. It is credulous, means you can tell it anything and it'll believe it. You can tell it anything and it will accept it. I'm a millionaire. Okay. You're uneducated, never went to a school, can't read and write. You know, no real skill, talent, or whatever. And you believe you're going to be a multi-millionaire, and the subconscious goes to work and make that come true for you. Haven't you seen that happen? Go back to our parents who owned houses and businesses. Uneducated, couldn't read and write. Am I right?
Yeah.
Uneducated, barely read and write, and they own business and own houses. Am I right?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Thus as it is, the unconscious that is responsible for the functioning of all our organs, but the intermediary of the brain, a result is produced. Yeah, that's how he writes. So let me go back and read this. The unconscious self, and the part of the problem with this is that I'm excerpting, I'm skipping and leaving out paragraphs and stuff, trying to get down to what I want to talk about, and it's not flowing always as best as it could. All right. So let me skip down to where the bold is. Oh, no, I can't. Not only does the unconscious self preside over the functions of our organism, but also over all our actions, whatever they are. It is this that we call imagination. That's where I was looking for. It is this that we call imagination. And it is this which, contrary to accepted opinion, always makes us act, even and above all, against our will when there is antagonism between these two forces, the imagination and the will. Chapter 3. Again, just a couple of paragraphs from chapter 3. And it's talking about suggestion and autosuggestion. This is what I'm looking for. It's making a distinction between suggestion and autosuggestion for the purpose of helping us to understand what is happening when you say, every day in every way I am getting better and better. That is what this is explaining. What is happening in your thinking? What is happening in your mind when you are using this affirmation every day in every way, I am getting better and better? What is happening when you are in your healing meditation at night, when you fall asleep and you are imagining and you're finished putting on that garment, and when you're in the finishing room, when you're talking to yourself, this is what is happening. But you have to understand that the distinction between suggestion and autosuggestion. Clear?
Yes.
Now that we have learned to realize the enormous power of the unconscious or imaginative being, I am going to show how this self, hitherto considered indomitable, can be as easily controlled as a torrent or an unbroken horse. What is he talking about? He's still talking, he's showing you the power of this unconscious mind, this subconscious mind. Reread it. Now that we have learned to realize the enormous power of the unconscious, I'm going to show how this unconscious can be as easily controlled as an unbroken horse. I don't want any, let's just listen. Okay? It can be controlled. You can control this self. But before going any further, it is necessary to define carefully two words that are often used without being properly understood. And these two words are suggestion and autosuggestion. What then is suggestion? It may be defined as the act of imposing an idea on the brain of another. Okay, but does this action really exist? Properly speaking, no. Now, up until now, did you always understand that that was the meaning of suggestion? I did. Properly speaking, no. Suggestion does not indeed exist by itself. It does not and cannot exist except by something happening within it, before it. That French term there simply means but for or except by. It says sine qua non. It does not and cannot exist except on the sine qua non condition of transforming itself into autosuggestion in the subject. Let's keep going over this till everybody says, we only got 3 or 4. But you have to have, yes.
What was that definition, but for?
Sine qua non, but for, or except by, it precedes, it's happening at the same time. Okay. Suggestion does not indeed exist by itself. It does not and cannot exist except on the sine qua non condition of transforming itself into autosuggestion in the subject. This latter word, autosuggestion, may be defined as the implanting of an idea in oneself by oneself. In oneself, by oneself. Something to think about?
Yeah. I call it lie to yourself.
Suggestion and autosuggestion. You may make suggestion to someone if the unconscious of the latter does not accept the suggestion, if it has not, as it were, digested it in order to transform it into autosuggestion, it produces no result. So I think there's a problem in that in copying this. So let me read it again. You may make a suggestion to someone if the unconscious of the latter, of the person, does not accept the suggestion, if it has not, as it were, digested it, if that person hasn't accepted it, hasn't digested it, in order to transform it into autosuggestion, it produces no result. So there's a two-part here. The person suggesting, and the person receiving the suggestion in that it becomes autosuggestion on the part of the person who receives it. And until the person receives it and accepts it, it is not yet autosuggestion.
Right.
It's the accepting.
Yeah, accepting it, digesting it. Now, that's two people involved. Now, here you are working within yourself and upon yourself. That's where we're going to, where we want to work with in self-healing. You're suggesting to yourself as you fall asleep. But are you always accepting it and digesting it and transforming it and letting it transform into autosuggestion? That's the spiritual part. Self-healing.
So is it similar to biography and autobiography, where the autobiography is you writing about yourself and biography is somebody writing about you?
That's true, but I can't make the connection
I see.
to this with that. Yeah, that's the same. I mean, that I understand, but I'm not able to make that transition here. So we're talking about self-healing. And what we're doing here is clarifying and also empowering ourselves in our own prayer treatment, healing the self, and also demonstrating in prayer. Chapter 4, the topic was the use of autosuggestion. So he's saying, having understood this, autosuggestion is nothing but a form of hypnotism, self-hypnotism, he says. And I would define it in these simple words: the influence of the imagination upon the moral and physical being of mankind. Now, this influence is undeniable, and without returning to previous examples, I will quote a few others. If you persuade yourself that you can do a certain thing, if you persuade yourself that you can do a certain thing, provided this thing be possible, you will do it however difficult it may be. If, on the contrary, you imagine that you cannot do the simplest thing in the world, it is impossible for you to do it. And molehills become for you unscalable mountains. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Can't you easily see this in others?
Yes.
But if our unconscious is the source of many of our ills, it can also bring about the cure of our physical and mental ailments.
Yes.
It can not only repair the ill it has done, but cure real illnesses so strong, that so long is this action, so strong is this action upon our organism.
Yes.
Shut yourself up alone in a room. Seat yourself in an armchair. Close your eyes to avoid any distraction, and concentrate your mind for a few moments on thinking these words. Such and such a thing is going to disappear, or such and such a thing is coming to pass. If you have really made the autosuggestion, that is to say, if your unconscious has assimilated the idea that you have presented to it, you are astonished to see the thing you have just thought come to pass.
Yes. Yes.
If you have really made the auto-suggestion is what you need to look at again. That's how he started the sentence, paragraph. So that's what we want to focus on again before we rush too fast here. If you have made the auto-suggestion, so in our prayer practice here, that's what we want to concentrate on. That's all we're talking about here today, is how to identify, how to understand the one singular idea, one single idea that we're talking about today, is how to make that auto-suggestion. Suggestion to auto-suggestion. There is a scripture that reads, and I'm only repeating it again, perhaps for the third time in our short time of being here. It is done unto you as you believe is exactly what we're talking about. But there's one single operative word in that sentence, in that scripture, that just hangs on. And then that word is as. It is done unto you as you shift that suggestion into autosuggestion.
Yes.
And in that moment, it is done.
Right.
That's where the it is done. It is done unto you as you believe. And the believe is accept. Believe, that's as you realize, as you accept. That's the belief.
That's why you emphasize as when you do say that?
Yes. That auto-suggestion is right there in that as. It is done unto you as you accept, you believe, you receive it. Well, Scripture also says that when you stand praying, believe that you receive and you shall have it. Shifting from suggestion, asking to that auto-suggestion, receiving it into that unconscious, that subconscious. It then takes it and brings it to pass. It then takes it and realizes it, brings it to pass. Let's look at what he says in chapter 5. Again, I've only excerpted a few lines out of each of these chapters from that document. Here he says, how to teach patients to make auto-suggestion. You remember a little while ago I started telling you something. I don't even know how I got into it, but it just came back to me, so let me finish telling you why this is important. Here's a real demonstration. And you remember I said, you've heard me tell this story before, and I will always use it. And you've heard me tell many illustrations and examples and stuff that I've experienced in my teaching. You remember me telling you about the man who was healed when I took him out to hear Reverend Shambach in Pomona Fair, where he was this big healing. Thousands of people followed him all over the country. And when he came to Pomona, this young man, the man was not a very old man, he was a young man, probably in his mid-40s. And I was at guidance and administration, preaching and teaching there, practitioner. I had an office. I was living in the Wilshire district, and I had an office there. And a woman at the church, it was a relative of hers. He didn't attend the church, but a relative of his did, who sent him to me because he had been given a short time to live. He had advanced stage of whatever he had. And when he came, I told you my story.
No.
That I realized that this is too much for me. It's got out of my category. I'm a get rich quick thing. Prosperity teacher. I was doing good. But I saw this and said, I'm not, wait a minute. I asked the man, I said, do you know Reverend Shambach? Yeah, he knew of him on the radio because he preceded me. I was on the radio at that time. And we were in this hour, Dr. Murphy, Dr. Richard, and Amon, and Shambach. We rounded up the hour. And I just had many cassette tapes at that time of Shambach because he was Pentecostal, but he had that metaphysical something that was going on in there that I could hear. But he was very clear Bible teacher as well. So I listened to him a lot. And so I had gone to hear Shambach before. Now Shambach's practice is that this stuff right here, this stuff right here, this stuff right here, was that he would start off the sessions with, I guess, singing or whatever, and he would preach, and then at that, the people would line up. You got people lined up on this side and lined up that side to come across the stage where he would pray for them, but he would lay hands on them, you know, and they would just fall or whatever they would be, and they would just move out the stage healed, you know. So what I did, I said, would you go to the Pomona Fairgrounds and hear Reverend Jeffrey? You know, he said, yeah, but what makes you think that with all those thousands of people there, that he's going to see me? I said, we're not worried about that. Let's just go. So there was something within me. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
I just had that faith. So when I got there, I'm just following the Spirit. I don't know what I'm going to do when I get there. I don't know if you're just going to get in the line or whatever, but I just believe that you will be healed. And so I had an envelope, like I took an envelope, wrote something on it, and gave it to the man, told him who I was. Not that I didn't admit anything to him, but I'm here with a member of my congregation, not a man. I'm just using buzzwords, keywords, that I know would get his attention. Number one, my congregation, and that's, you know, hearing it. So, lo and behold, we are sitting out here way deep in this audience. And Reverend Shammah gets up there, and he starts his service off, and he's not up there but a few minutes before he yells out loudly, understand? Reverend Mom is here. But I probably didn't use Reverend Mom to start off with, because I said key words. I probably said Reverend Johnson or something. And understand you got a member of your congregation here that the devil done jumped on. But we gonna get the devil off of him tonight. And people just went up. They called the man up ahead of the protocol, of whatever the way they do things. And he ministered to that man right there. He prayed for him, laid his hand on him, and that man came back to where we were sitting deep down in the audience. He just, and his wife was with him, and he just couldn't keep still. What's wrong, baby? What's wrong? She was talking to him, and I'm saying, what's going on? I'm on fire. Fire! He just had fire going through his body. He just couldn't contain himself. We didn't stay till the end of the long meeting. We went home. And we went, and he was okay. Now, his home was down south somewhere, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, somewhere. But he wanted to go home to see his mother, and that would be his mother's birthday present. It was a surprise that he was healed. The man was gone for a few weeks, and it wasn't long after that I learned the man passed on. Now that's what we're talking about here. I'm using that as an example of as you believe. That suggestion and auto-suggestion. Do you see what we're saying?
Yes.
See, this is a two-part thing. You look at the examples of the teachings by Jesus, the receiver participated. The receiver participated. Go your way, your faith has made you well. It is done unto you as you believe. In none of these examples do you see where any of these teachers healed by what they did only, but it was through their teaching. It was their teaching where the healing lied. Did that help?
Yes.
So, how to teach patients to make autosuggestion is the topic of this chapter in this document. The principle of the method may be summed up in these few words. It is impossible to think of two things at once. That is to say, that two ideas may be in juxtaposition, but they cannot be superimposed in our mind. That is to say that two ideas may be in juxtaposition, but they cannot be superimposed in our mind. Every thought entirely filling our mind, every thought entirely filling our mind becomes true for us and tends to transform itself into action. And tends to transform itself into action. So when you convince your subconscious to accept and to believe, it will do the work. It will transform that idea, that thought, that belief that faith into action, into becoming the image of that thing received and believed. Thus, if you can make a sick person think that her trouble is getting better, it will disappear. If you succeed in making a kleptomaniac think that he will not steal anymore, he will cease to steal. The training, which perhaps seems to you an impossibility, this training, which perhaps seems to you to be an impossibility, is, however, the simplest thing in the world. Now let's just stop right there. This that we're talking about, he is saying, is the simplest thing in the world. I just want to teach you the ABCs of it. But the way I'm going to teach you the ABCs of it is just like teaching a child who has never ridden a bicycle before. The way you teach a child who has never ridden the Bible before is not by reading instructions to him or her, or coming to the workshop and hearing lessons about it. Where am I going?
Yes.
He has to get on it.
Yes. And it's on.
They will never learn if they don't get on it and start pedaling and fall off and get back up and go again. That's the only way you're going to learn what I'm talking about today, is practice. You're not going to learn it, and this is my problem, your problem, this is our problem. What is our problem? We read about this. It's inspiring, it's motivating, it's encouraging. That sure sounds good. And also we leave here understanding, I got that. But you don't get on the bicycle, you don't fall down, you don't get scratched, you don't get up again. And sometimes there have been people who have tried to learn to ride and gave up on it and never rode all their life.
That's true.
There might be some people who started off learning how to drive a car, had a bad experience and just didn't go back at it again. Got married one time and didn't ride it right. Am I right?
Yeah.
Same thing. This is our problem in practicing this stuff right here. And you know what? What we have, it is done unto you as we believe. We have learned to believe that this is hard and I can't do it.
Yes.
We have learned to accept, to believe that this is complicated. I can't do this. And one reason we can't do it is that to learn how to ride this bicycle, you might have to do this for 2 or 3 weeks before you can sail on off and be an expert at it. Yeah. And look at these little kids. They would jump on that thing and about give them 30 minutes. The only reason it took them longer is that the parent was too scared to let them. They come back home one day, hey, look at you. Parent was gone. Mama wasn't looking no more. Daddy come, you got on a helmet and a wristlet and all the teeth just strapped all down. They can't even be free. But if they can get away from the parent, they just learn on their own. This is the way we are in prayer and then using this thing, this that I'm talking about right here. We're scared to do this. Am I right?
Absolutely.
The training, which perhaps seems to you an impossibility, is, however, the simplest thing in the world. It is enough by a series of appropriate and graduated experiments to teach you, as it were, the ABCs of conscious thought, and here is the series. By following it to the letter, one can be absolutely sure of obtaining a good result, except with the 2 categories of persons mentioned above. And let's see if we got anybody in here who fit these 2. 1, the mentally undeveloped who are not capable of understanding what you say to them. And 2, those who are unwilling to understand. Now, we talked about your cousin stuff. Now he's going to give you an experiment. So this is what my end today is this, the 4th experiment. He had given 3 experiments before this, and I just captured one to bring to share with you. And this is our practice all week long. Now, when you come back here next Tuesday, we're going to practice here and see who has gotten this. If there's only 1 person or 0 who have gotten this between now and next week, it's okay, unless that's your last week of coming here. But if you're coming here after then, don't worry about it. We're going to be together till the end of October. We go from January to October. So chill, take your time, but this is what we're going to be practicing over the next few weeks. So what I want you to do is that if you have somebody at home that you can practice this with, try it. If you go to Starbucks and they let you sit there 10 minutes, call the police on you. They just turn around and see if there's somebody there. Here, buy you a cup of coffee. Let's practice this. Do you see what I'm saying? Let's practice this between young little child, great child, red call one of them grandchildren over, you know. You need to talk to mom and daddy, get your grandchildren. But you need to practice this with somebody. Now, what he is saying, if you can practice this little simple demonstration, oh, that's going to advance you exponentially so far closer to your healing. If you can just practice this little simple example. And then after you manifest your own healing through this, you can get some business cards. Anyway, let's get back to the experiment. The 4th experiment. Ask someone to clasp his hands as tight as possible. That is to say, until the fingers tremble slightly. Hold them tight. Look at him and keep your hands on his as to squeeze them together still more tightly. That don't hurt nobody. Just mean firm, don't squeeze, just firmly hold their hands. Then tell them to think that he cannot unclasp his fingers. That you're going to count to 3, and that when you say 3, he is to try to separate his hands while thinking all the time, I cannot do it. I can't separate them. And he will find it impossible. Shall I reread that?
Yeah.
You're standing with somebody, and you're going to ask them to hold his hands together like this, hold their hands together like this. And tell them that you're not going to be able to release your hands. Is that what he said?
Yes.
And look at him in the same way and keep your hands on his as though to squeeze them together still more. You're holding that person's hand, you're going to, don't break his hand, but hold him firmly, squeeze them together. And tell him to think he cannot open his fingers. That you're going to count to 3, and when you get to 3, you're going to let him go, and he's going to try to separate his hands while he's thinking all the time, I cannot do it. Now, what are you seeing here in suggestion and autosuggestion? Think about it. What you might be doing is only thinking about you talking to the man. And you're thinking that he cannot, yes, you must be thinking that he cannot do it, but the person has to be thinking that he cannot do it.
Yes.
That's getting to autosuggestion. You are thinking it, now the person is also thinking, I cannot do it. Then count very slowly. 1, 2, 3. Then add immediately, you cannot do it. You cannot do it. And the person thinking, I cannot do it. See the agreement? Where 2 or more agree. As touching anything in my name. What is name? The way I do it. In my nature. Coue says, in my name. In Coue's name, meaning that in his instructions and the method by which he does it, that's what in my name means. Right? Where two or more agree as touching anything, it is done unto you as you believe, is what we're talking about and demonstrating here. If the subject is thinking properly, I cannot do it. Not only is he unable to separate his fingers, but he will clasp themselves all the more tightly together, the more efforts he makes to separate them. But the latter clasp themselves all the more tightly together, the more efforts he makes to separate them. He obtains, in fact, exactly the contrary to what he means. In a few moments, say to him, now think I can do it. And his fingers will separate. His fingers will separate themselves.
You said in a few moments, think it.
Okay. Now, he obtains, in fact, so in a few moments, say to him, and you're telling him, now think I can do it. I can separate. And his fingers will separate themselves. Be careful to always to keep your eyes fixed on the wood of the subject's nose. And do not allow him to turn his eyes away from yours for a single moment. If he is unable to unclasp his hands, do not think now. In other words, if this doesn't work, let's stop there. Let's say I'm doing this with Daryl and we're trying to exercise and, I think I'm doing everything right. I think I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. And you have given him the instructions and he's following. Now, let's say that we tried it and it didn't work. It says, if he is able to if he is able to unclasp his hands, meaning if it doesn't work, do not think it is your own fault. It is Daryl's fault. If he has not properly thought, I cannot. Assure him firmly of this and begin the experiment again. Get back on the bike again. Try again. Keep on trying. Don't get judgmental. Don't think negative of him. Don't be impatient with him. So if you're practicing with somebody, don't get impatient with the person. And don't give up. Don't be scouring. Do you understand?
Yes.
Chill. Take your time. And maybe the person will practice with you again if they don't feel, embarrassed and, like they didn't do something right. Because you need somebody to practice with. In all these experiments, he says, I cannot repeat too often. It is not suggestion, properly so called. It is not the suggestion. In my case with Daryl, it's not. It's not the suggestion, it's what he's going to receive and participate in that transforms it into autosuggestion that's the healing. Do you see? That old doctor is no good. I'm going to another. Nothing wrong with the doctor. Right? In all these experiments, he says, it is not suggestion which produces the phenomena, but the autosuggestion which is consecutive to the suggestion of the operator, or which follows. That's what consecutive is saying, or successive. So let's look at what he says in chapter 6, the method of procedure in creative suggestion. When the subject has passed through the preceding experiments and has understood them, he is ripe for curative suggestion. Now, that's where we want to end up today. When you're successful with this demonstration, look where you are now, where you put yourself into now being in you're in a state of healing. You're in a state of where you can demonstrate. You can be healed every day and every. Now, when you say every day and every way, I am getting better and better, and in that you got your healing goal and your desire and all of that all clarified. But can you see how much certain you are of healing? When the subject has passed through the preceding experiments and has understood them, he is ripe for curative suggestion. He is like a cultivated field in which the seed can germinate and develop, whereas before it was but rough earth in which it would have perished. I may say that it is not necessary to know which organ is affected when you're trying to heal the body. Under the influence of the autosuggestion, every day in every respect I'm getting better and better, the unconscious acts upon the organ which it can pick out itself. I must also add, and it is extremely important, that if up to the present you have lacked confidence in yourself, I tell you that this self-distrust will disappear little by little and give place to self-confidence, based on the knowledge of this force of incalculable power which is in each one of us. It is absolutely necessary for every human being to have this confidence. Without it, one can accomplish nothing. With it, one can accomplish whatever one likes. You are then going to have confidence in yourself. And this confidence gives you the assurance that you are capable of accomplishing perfectly well whatever you wish to do, on the condition that it is reasonable. By considering the thing easy, it becomes so for you, although it might seem difficult to others. You will do it quickly and well, and without fatigue, because you do it without effort. Whereas if you had considered it as difficult or impossible, it would have become so for you, simply because you would have thought it so. Before sending away your patient, you must tell him that he carries within him the instrument by which he can cure himself, and that you are, as it were, only a professor teaching him to use this instrument, and that he must help you in your task. Thus, every morning before rising, and every night on getting into bed, he must shut his eyes and in thought transport himself into your presence, and then repeat 20 times consecutively in a monotonous voice, counting by means of a string with 20 knots in it, this little phrase: every day, in every respect, I am getting better and better. In his mind, he should emphasize the words, in every respect. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. He's changing that in every way into every respect. But he must emphasize that in every way. He must emphasize that in every respect. In his mind, he should emphasize in every respect, which applies to every need, whether it's mental or physical. The general suggestion is more effective than special ones. So let's change the every way to every respect. So let's go. Every day, in